Welcome to the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley, psychology student and international best-selling psychology author of over 30 psychology books, bringing you the latest psychology news, fascinating psychology topics and more each week. If you want to learn more, then please check out connorwhiteley.net/books. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube video or follow on your favourite podcast app. And here's the show. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 228 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley. And today's episode is on how do wildfires impact mental health? And it is Saturday, the 9th of December 2023 as I record this. So it is a really, really hot evening, and the reason why I decided to record the podcast in the evening for a change is because I thought that I would be able to record it without dying from heat stroke. I'm not so sure about that now, so I will continue and hopefully I will make it to the end of this podcast episode. But today's podcast episode is one I wrote quite a while ago because I had actually forgotten there was a new book coming out like last month or so. Originally I wrote this podcast episode, so I've managed to use that instead. And because of this week, I'm so grateful that I actually had that piece of spare content. But that's a really good, rather short podcast episode compared to normal, but I still really, really love it. So moving on to the psychology news section, we're reading from the British Psychological Society Research Digest. So the first one is, inflammatory response may influence how we see others. People who are sick typically feel fatigued, emotionally low, and less inclined to socialize. This sort of sickness behaviors has been particularly linked to inflammation, the immune system's response to a trigger, such as a virus or an injury. However, recent work has found higher levels of inflammation don't always lead to the same feelings and behaviors, and other factors seem to play a role. Now, in a paper in Brain Behavior and Immunity, Mallory J. Feldman at the University of North Carolina and her colleagues report hints that one such factor might be interoceptive ability, the ability to perceive sensory signals from inside the body. And what the study basically found was that if someone has a poor ability to actually focus on their body and actually learn from the inflammatory signals, then they were less likely to socialize. So if you're more in tuned up with your body, let's say, then you're more likely to be able to read emotional cues on trust tasks, and you're going to show less sickness of behavior. So that's basically what it's about. So I did actually have a look at the BPS's website, and I do completely agree though, because the problem with the study was that the sample was small, which is something I'm ridiculously anal about ever since I was traumatized by the gamification of autism literature. I'm sorry, I've said it once, I will say it 1,000 more times. 10 pistons is not a scientifically valid study when you're trying to make grand gestures about an entire clinical population. Yeah, I'm sorry, I will never apologise for being that stubborn. But then the only other thing that I've actually got to say about this is that I think this is another good example of the mind-body link, though, because our physical pain is having a psychological impact on us, which is always interesting. It's always good to know and actually have a bit more research about why does our physical body impact our mental processes and our behaviour. So now I think the next step might be why exactly does this happen? Because it'd be interesting to find out why. So the next one is, women's football performs well on level playing field. England's love of their women's football team, the Lionesses, has been growing steadily over the last few years. However, previous to this, women's football rarely crossed the minds of even the keenest football followers. The difference in popularity between men's and women's football has historically been quite stark. Higher levels of skill is often cited as one of the reasons why people consider men's football to be better than women's. Seriously? But is this really the case? A new study published in Sport Management Review finds that when gender is obscured, the risk evaluation of men's and women's football changed dramatically. Well, yeah, I have no idea how men's football's more skillful than women's. That's the most stupid idea I've ever heard. Why? Why do people think that? They're both just trying to kick a ball around as far as I'm concerned, and honestly, it's why I don't like football, because, to be honest, it's why I'm not really a sporty person, because football, it's just people running around kicking a ball. Ice hockey, if I'm just going to insult everyone's favourite pastimes here, I might as well go all the way. Ice hockey. No, in all fairness, ice hockey's a bit more interesting because that's a bit more brutal, even though I don't watch it. But rugby is the same sort of thing though. Someone's running around with a ball and you need to try and get the ball off them. And I'm not a sporty person, as you can tell. But I just cannot get over the fact that people think that men's football is more skillful than women's. I know the skill in all of these sports, and it's why I'm rubbish at them, because I don't have those skills, and I do not have the inclination to try and learn those skills. I think that little point has just hijacked the entire post site for me, because I'm sure if there wasn't that cited reason, then I could probably come up with some other stuff. And the final one is, how are we doing on heat waves? Well, I can answer that. Stupidly bad. If you're currently situated by a fan or an air conditioning unit, then which I'm really not impressed I'm not, because you can't record a podcast with something going on in the background. In November last year, we reported on research showcasing that media coverage on heatwaves didn't reflect the dangers of the climate crisis. Looking at reports at 2019's European heatwave, the most deadly natural disaster that year, killing over 2,500 people, the team found that images accompanying articles most commonly depicted fire in the sun. Have the news outlets gotten a better attack on the danger of heat waves recently? We want to know what you think. You can reply us, and you can reply at Twitter or X to the BPS. Personally, I think yes, because because I watch Sky News. I say watch. I've been avoiding the news quite a lot lately. I've sort of been keeping my posts on stuff, so I'm not completely ignorant. But I've been staying away from it mostly. But I think when I was watching the news, I would say that it was a lot more serious about the heat waves, because for example, right now, it should not be 30 degrees in England in September. It seriously shouldn't be. It should be warm. It should always be warm for the first half of September. It should not be this hot. So I should not be sweating in my audio booth. It's as simple as that. So climate crisis is definitely real though, and there's definitely a heat wave. But I would say that the media outlets, I think a lot of them still have a long way to come in terms of actually doing a good, accurate perception of the climate crisis and how this is impacting heat waves. So that's enough the psychology news section. So let's move on to the personal update. So we're moving on to the personal update. So this week, to be honest, I wasn't actually sure what I was going to say to this, but I want to be as truthful as I can with you guys, because this is a psychology podcast that, to be honest, basically specializes in mental health and always focuses on clinical psychology stuff. So I think it's always good for us to actually hear lived experience, especially when it's positive and mixed, and we sort of know what we need to do to continue to improve ourselves. So on Tuesday, that was my last therapy session. Great woman, I cannot recommend her enough. If you are in the Kent area of England, I highly, highly recommend Helen Canning's brilliant, brilliant like woman, and she's been really, really helpful. So I finished therapy like with her. It was a very short, like 4 weeks thing, as I've mentioned before. But I've heard about this in clinical psychology before, when a client goes off therapy, so they're sort of free back in the world, and like they've sort of like stopped therapy, and they sort of become a bit lost or something, or to be honest, maybe that's not the right word, but basically there's a gap between when they can get support again. For example, I need the university's support because they do autism diagnosis and they do autism support. That's what I need. I seriously need that. I need that more than ever nowadays. But I can't get to that for another 2 weeks. So there's this really weird 2 week gap. And it has been so hard this week, not only because of the friendship that I ruined, and the problem is that if you've been abused, traumatized, and you have autism, that has made you have really bad relationship issues in the past. So friendships are really hard for you. You sort of do get a bit lonely. Like, I know I'm really, really popular, to be honest, but I don't have many close relationships that I can talk to. Like, if I'm in a crisis, I don't actually have a lot of wiggle room about who I can go to, which I admit is a massive problem. So I know going back into my masters, I know I need to get over a lot of issues about sort of being practical. Like, I'm a very practical person. And the reason why I didn't do any societies, which if you're in an international audience member, they're basically adult social clubs at university. All UK universities have them, and they're basically like our social clubs, formed around a particular topic or interest, to be honest. That's a better way to put it. And the reason why I didn't actually attend any of them last year was, one, because of fear, guilt, and shame, which I've dealt with in therapy, but also I just didn't want to hang around university after my lectures for God knows how long until the society started in the evenings. I sort of realise now that I cannot be like that anymore. Like, I've literally got to start going to weekly societies, weekly meeting up with other people, because it's not so much the fact that I need friends, because, well, that's another major factor, but I need a social life, because anything that this mental health crisis has taught me is that life can be really, really lonely at times, and that's not healthy. And the reason why I'm actually telling all of you this is basically just to hammer home the point that you've got to get a firm, really great social support network like around you, because everyone does need friends. You all need like social connections, and you all need like-minded people that can support you when life goes wrong, though. And to be honest, I actually laugh about it to some extent, though, because lots of people, they do get on with me, but because of my own issues and my past, I never let them become firm friends with me. It's just how I work, and so that's definitely something I've got to work on, like this year. So I think the next week, even though I'm really grateful that I'm working in learning disability, so I've got a work experience placement which will keep me busy for the next week, so I don't have to ruminate, I don't have to focus on my mental health. I think that I just want to get back to university now, just so I'm with other people. I can start going to societies. I can start just rebuilding my life properly after this crazy, crazy summer that's been really intense. And also, I really hope that this message actually resonates with any university students. So definitely don't waste your time this academic year. If there's something that you want to do it. Definitely do it. And as always, I always love to hear your thoughts and feelings on today's episode. So you can always email me, connorwhiteley at connorwhiteley.net. You can always leave a comment at the show notes at connorwhiteley.net/podcast. And you can always tweet me on Twitter at sci-fi-whiteley. I always love to hear from all of you because it helps make the podcast feel more like a conversation. And today's episode has been sponsored by Abnormal Psychology, the causes and treatments of depression, anxiety, and more. So this is a great book for today's episode because what this great, really easy to understand book actually does is that it helps you to understand a wide range of mental health conditions, including depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, and so many others. So it helps you to understand the biological, social, and the psychological causes of the oppression, in addition to the other mental health conditions. So it allows you to deepen your understanding of the oppression. But then it also talks about diagnosis. It's like, how do you actually get a mental health condition diagnosis? And then later in the book, it goes on to talk about the social, psychological, and the biological treatments, which is a great chapter. It's always really, really fun though, especially the cultural treatments. That is one of my favourite sections. So this is a very popular book. It always sells tons of every month, and a lot of people find it really useful. So that is Abnormal Psychology, causes and treatments of depression, anxiety, and more. Available from all major ebook retailers, and you can order the paperback and hardback version from Amazon, your local bookstore, or local library if you request it. And you can order the ebook directly from me at payhip.com/conwhiteley. So, Boss Buying Books helps to support the creation and the editing of the podcast. My time is sponsored by my wonderful patrons. And as always, an absolute massive thank you to my wonderful patrons. Because your support shows that you like the show and that you want it to continue. So if you wanted to become a patron and to get tons of great rewards, then head on over to patreon.com/the Psychology World podcast. So that's enough for the personal update. So let's move on to the content part of today's episode. So we're moving on to the content part of today's episode. So we're going to be talking about how do wildfires impact mental health. So this is a great episode that I'm really looking forward to. I think it's very timely, so let's dive into it. With wildfires becoming increasingly common, with them destroying homes, families, and entire counties, we need to know how wildfires are impacting our mental health. We need to know if wildfires increase or decrease our mental health, and what can we do to improve our mental health after the effects of the wildfires. If you're interested in clinical psychology, mental health, and climate change, then you're going to love today's episode. We know that our physical health is clearly impacted by wildfires because when people get exposed to the smog, smoke, and poor air quality of wildfires, then this negatively impacts our physical health. For example, the wildfires in Canada early in 2023 led to weeks of smog, as well as poor air quality, to be experienced by the United States. However, this is nothing new because this isn't the first time, nor will it be the last, that wildfires have been linked to negative effects on our health, especially our mental health, since a lot of studies have focused on this research area specifically, and there is a very useful meta-analysis that helps us to understand the results. Therefore, the meta-analysis Gao and al. 2023 looked at studies that happened in Canada, the USA, and Australia, and 21 of these studies focused on the effects of pollutants and the effects of wildfires on mental health. The other studies in the meta-analysis focused on physical health. As a result, as you can imagine, all the studies found wildfires negatively impacted our mental health, as well as there were strong associations between wildfire egg exposure and post-traumatic stress disorder, anger issues, specific phobia, heavy drinking, and severe psychological distress. One of the included studies even found a decade later a geographical region that experienced a wildfire. There was a 22% increase in mental health difficulties and heavy drinking. This was supported by research by Brown et al. 2021 as well. Conclusion. At the end of this rather short podcast episode today, I want to stress that even though a lot of the literature does focus on developing countries, there is a good research saying that the rise in global temperatures and the wildfires it causes does impact our mental health. It doesn't only affect our environment and farming and livelihoods, which of course has negative impacts on the economy as well as quality of living, but it does impact our mental health too. The entire point of this podcast episode isn't to tell you that the world is doomed now because of climate change negatively impacting our mental health. This is simply another reason why climate change needs us to be dealt with. Otherwise, our mental health services will be under even more pressure as the number of wildfires around the world continues to rise. And no one can deny this connection anymore, because we have the data, science, and the studies to prove it. Climate change is real, but it can be stopped. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode and you got something out of it. I'm definitely quite surprised about how short it was. I thought it was actually going to be a little longer, but the episode said what it needed to say. Because mental health and wildfires, there is a strong connection, and unless we do something to stop climate change now, then wildfires will only get worse, meaning mental health will only get worse, and that is not good. Right? We do not need more people suffering for a reason that is easily preventable, which can be very much preventable. So if you know someone who enjoyed today's episode, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help spread the word about the podcast. And if you want to know more about mental health, definitely check out Animal Psychology, the causes and treatments of depression, anxiety, and more. Available from all major ebook retailers, and you can buy the ebook directly from me at payhip.com/ConWhiteley. And if you want to become a patron of the show, then definitely check out patreon.com/The Psychology World Podcast. So have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening today. I hope you found it helpful. Please remember to like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow the podcast on your favourite podcast app. And if you wanted to learn more, then please check out the backlist of the podcast episodes or my books at conwhiteley.net. So have a great day, and I'll see you next time.